Hello Year 7, it's Miss Mulcair here again. Today we're going to be looking at how to compare two different articles. So to start us off, I've got a do it now challenge for you. There are 4 sentences. All I want you to do is to add an adjective to each one that gives a strong impression of the thing it describes. So try not to use just a colour or a size. So for example, you have the cat slinked out of the room. You might change it to the evil cat slinked out of the room. And then as an extension, try to add a completely different adjective that gives the opposite impression. So you might change it to the lovely cat slinked out of the room. So pause the video now to give yourself a chance to do that, and then come back when you're finished. Okay, so today we're learning how to compare two articles. The reason we're doing this is to kind of develop our ways of speaking about how writers use language for effect. So today's day of the word is going to be exaggerated. So the definition of the word exaggerated is when something is shown as larger, better, or worse than in reality. So if you could go around the bubbles of the word of the day map and fill in what category is it in. So is it a noun, an adjective, or a verb? Give an example sentence. Write down if it has an opposite word if you can think of one, and how it sounds. So first sound, the number of syllables, and the rhyming words. And then a challenge there, if you want to do that as well, is to find synonyms for the word. So a synonym is a word that means the same thing. So a synonym for good might be excellent, for example. So pause the video now to give yourself a chance to complete the word map. Okay. So we're going to try and talk about the tone and the mood of two different articles today. So the tone of a piece of writing is a reflection of an author's attitude towards his or her subject. So we have an example paragraph here. The school's decision to add 4 more vending machines shows that it thinks the health of its student is unimportant. Instead of working to make needed changes like adding better computers to the school, it decided that students need sugar, caffeine, fat and calories instead. It's ridiculous. What kind of message does it send to our kids? Parents try to teach them to avoid sugary, fatty foods, but now students have 4 more chances to swell up on junk food. The so-called food sold in these vending machines will make the student's body grow, but it will be measured in pounds. So take a second, pause the video and write down what you think the tone of that piece of writing was. What do you think the tone is? What's the author's attitude towards that subject? Okay, so for this particular example, the author, the person who wrote this, is really quite angry, right? Their attitude towards the new vending machines is really angry. So that's the tone of that piece of writing. Okay, if we look at mood then, so mood, people get confused between the two and use them in a similar way, but mood is the atmosphere that a writer creates for a reader that plays on the reader's imagination and emotion through the use of descriptive adverbs or adjectives. So it's kind of atmosphere that the reader might experience while they're reading something. So the example here is, I rose from bed with a noise ringing in my ears so loudly that I almost lost my balance. The noise sounded like the screeching moan of claws being drug against glass. The sharp, squeaking sound cut through the darkness of the night and woke me up from my dream. My first thought was that a bear was trying to get inside of the cabin, but a bear's claws would have shattered the glass. As I happened on the window, the full moon behind whatever was making the noise shone against it like a giant spotlight. I saw behind the curtain the shape of something tall and lanky with long arms reaching out to the window. So pause the video here and write down what kind of mood you think is being conveyed here. So what kind of atmosphere is the writer creating for the reader? Okay, so in this particular example, the atmosphere, the mood is quite scary. It's quite a creepy one. It's trying to make you feel a little bit on edge as you're reading it, a little bit worried about what's going to happen. Okay, so looking at the two articles we've read this week, the one about Brecon Beacons and the one about Everest, I want you to read back through them. There'll be a copy of them both on class charts for you to look at, so make sure you've opened that up. And then I want you to draw a Venn diagram, like on the slide here, and write down what you think the similarities and differences are. So the similarities would go in the middle bit of that diagram, and the differences would go on the two outer edges. So any similarities or differences between what the writers talk about, what their attitudes are, and then see if you can kind of bring tone and mood onto that. So is the tone of both articles similar, and is the mood similar? Would you put that in the middle, or would you put that on either side as a difference? So pause the video now so you can have a look through the articles and complete the diagram. Okay, so now what I want you to do is to try to scoop out the evidence to match your similarities and differences. So what I mean by that is if you have a similarity in both articles speak about the same thing in the same way, I want you to find a quote from each article that shows how they do that. And then the same for differences. So if you could do 2 similarities and 2 differences, if you've got them, or up to 4 altogether. So you might have 3 differences and 1 similarity, that's fine. But I want 4 examples altogether with quotes from each article. So pause the video now and then come back when you are finished. Okay, so what I want to do now is put that into a piece of writing. So you're going to create your own paragraph from your diagram and your quotes. So you're going to write together Article 1 and Article 2. So Brecon Beacons and the Everest article are similar or different because, and that's where you'd write what you put in your diagram, because they both talk about the same thing in the same way, or they talk about this differently, or the tone is different. And then in Article 1 it states, that's where you'd put your quote. This suggests, that's where you're putting your inference. Okay, so based on the quote, what can you infer from the writer? What does it suggest to you? And then you use either however or similarly, depending on if you're talking about similarities or differences. In Article 2, the writer states, and then this implies. Or you can use suggests again if you prefer. Okay, so try to complete 2 paragraphs on either both similarities, both differences, or one of each. Your challenge, if you want to include it, is to write about the tone and mood in your paragraph. So you might do one on tone, one on mood, or one of either in a paragraph. So pause the video now to give yourself a chance to do this with the sentence starters given, and then come back when you're finished. Okay, finally then, this is just a chance for you to read back through your own writing and self-assess how well you think you did. So you're going to choose one medal, so one thing you think you did really well, and one mission, one thing that you think you might need to improve for next time. So there's 3 examples of each here, but if you can think of something else that you'd rather say, that's fine. So an example of a medal might be you've made a clear point of comparison, or as a mission you might say you need to use quotes to support your points. So pause the video here to give yourself a chance to write one of each, and then once you're finished that, you can send your work over to your teacher, and I'll see you back next week for our next lesson. So thank you, Year 7, and I hope you have a lovely weekend.